Of course, comic book fans will be quick to point out how unlikely Dr. Octopus is to lift a finger, or, well, one of his many wiggly-waggly robotic arms anyway, to ever help his hated foe. After all, when it comes to Marvel villains, the not-so-good Doctor is one of the biggest and most classic examples of a mad scientist cursing his enemy at the top of his lungs every time one of his larger-than-life plans are foiled. Octavius has rarely ever been one to have any selfless goals, always striving to prove his own intellect and superiority to the rest of the world, even if doing so may cost countless human lives. Remember, this is a man who responded to the news of being fatally ill by trying to wipe out 99.92% of the world's population just so the survivors could know him as history's greatest monster after he died. Yeah, let's just say they didn't call that storyline Ends of the World for nothing. And even when he is actually genuinely attempting to do good, like in the famous Superior Spider-Man storyline where he took over Peter's body, his glory-seeking personality pushes him to try and accomplish it through violent totalitarian means. For whatever good he did in this time, Otto absolutely reveled in any opportunity to prove himself, well, superior to his predecessor in every possible way. Every one of Otto's actions at the time, from how he used his tech, ignoring or outright attempting to cut ties with people in Peter's social life, or how he dealt with particularly troublesome and deadly villains, which the obscure Spider-Man villain called Massacre had to learn the hard way, were driven less by genuine desires to do good and more by a need to one-up Peter, almost as if entirely out of spite. So the question is, why would this man ever help Spider-Man in any story? Well, that would be because Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus is actually remarkably different from his comic book counterpart. Think back to the Raimi trilogy and the still highly acclaimed Spider-Man 2, and remember what Otto Octavius was actually trying to accomplish before his mind deteriorated after that horrible accident. Being portrayed as a far more friendly man, this film's Otto was not just a good influence and someone for Peter to look up to in terms of intelligence and scientific pursuit. He was also a visionary, attempting to create a new everlasting clean energy source in the hopes of improving the lives of everyone on Earth. He was even savvy enough to be aware of the potential problems with installing advanced AI in the machines he built to do so and connecting them directly to his own brain, and thus had a failsafe installed. Even if that failsafe, failed once everything went wrong. Yeah, that's superhero media for ya. And after spending the entire movie fighting Spider-Man, do you remember what his last words were as Peter finally got through to him and convinced him to stop trying to rebuild the machine that caused all this misery in the first place?
I will not die a monster.
Yeah, that's a pretty far cry from Mr. If I gotta die, so does everyone else on Earth from the comics, now isn't it? Ultimately, Molina's Octavius never actually truly became the villainous Dr. Octopus we know from the comics. Most of his malice seemed to come from the arms themselves, whether that means they actually had any sentience, outright controlled him, or simply amplified his negative impulses. Molina's Otto was basically a good man who lost his way, but clawed his way back from the brink to fix the mistakes he'd made, sacrificing his own life to do so. So if he did indeed somehow survive, or was simply pulled away by Doctor Strange's multiversal spellcasting at the very last second, it makes total sense for him to be on the side of good when he makes his second appearance in No Way Home. But that begs a different question, like, why is he even set to function as a villain in this movie in the first place? There are a number of tricks that a writer could use to yank this version of Dr. Octopus right back into villainy. It could be a case of amnesia, or maybe the arms reassert their dominance over him after he recovers from the shock of what he just experienced, influencing him to blame all of his misfortune on Spider-Man. That is, any Spider-Man he comes across. It could be that the pure desperation of being stuck in a world unknown to him with nowhere to go and having no way home causes him to rationalize that the end justifies the means, which makes him take extreme measures in order to return to his own world. Perhaps he's in denial and doesn't even consider this new world real, having no qualms with killing or destroying it in an attempt to make it back to his own reality. Or maybe he's not actually the Spider-Man 2 Dr. Octopus we know, and just a broad strokes variant who never actually reformed. Jamie Foxx's remarks that he won't be blue this time and seemingly throwing the classic yellow lightning from the comics kind of suggest so. And sure, any one of these story beats would certainly give the tentacled menace a reason to duke it out with Spider-Man once again, but they all feel kind of lackluster. Plus, all of them would pretty much negate all the character development he went through in the first film, which would be a shameful thing to do to such an emotional and fondly remembered climax. Or, God forbid, the spiders would have to snap him out of it all over again, and we'd just get a repeat of the stuff he's already done. And if he's a variant, then why bother getting Molina back at all? Well, okay, we know why. Gimmick casting almost never fails to put butts in theater seats, but yeah, no thanks. So the answer might lie with the other villains present in the film. We know that Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin and Jamie Foxx's Electro are returning as well, and there are many theories based on quick shots in the trailer that suggest even more villains like Sandman and the Lizard may appear, which in turn leaves a final spot open to form a potential Sinister Six, which could easily be filled out by the still alive Vulture, the Amazing series Rhino, or a Mysterio who turned out to have faked his death. No, I didn't forget about McGargan, but Marvel sure did. I've honestly given up on ever seeing that scene pay off at this point.
I can finish the next order, but without any new materials from that truck.
Yeah. Damn it. We still have enough to do the Gargan deal, though, right?
Yeah, but then that's it.
What an absolute waste. Anyway, this is where the story could go in any number of directions that could set Octavius up for eventually helping the heroes. Perhaps he's the leader of the Sinister Six, as he has been many times in the comics, but has simply gathered them to improve his chances of finding a way home for all of them, going with that whole end justifies the means rationale from before. But with more volatile members like the Green Goblin and Electro in the group, it's not hard to imagine Octavius eventually losing control of them and having to assist the Spiders in the ensuing brawl. Maybe he'll be joined by Sandman, who also had a bit of a reform in his movie and regularly straddles the line of good and evil in the comics. Or perhaps he's playing the double agent in a Green Goblin-led team that's hellbent on killing every Spider-Man they find, helping from behind the shadows and sabotaging the villain's plans. He would have to make any fights with the Spider-Man look good in that situation, so we'd still get all the Octopus vs. Spider brawling we could ever possibly want. And even if he has made a full return to villainy, it wouldn't be unlikely for Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus to end up competing for control of the group either, considering how they are the two characters who have the most claim to the status as Peter's archenemy in the comics. Heck, that could be another reason for the good Doctor to help the Spider Gang. It could simply be a matter of pride, wishing to prove himself Spider-Man's superior foe once the opportunity presents itself. And let's be honest, watching Dr. Octopus fight Green Goblin on the big screen would absolutely rock all of our socks off. But who knows? The possibilities are endless, much like the multiverse itself.